This episode is brought to you by the Cornell Executive MBA, MS in Healthcare Leadership, in partnership with the Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences. The future of healthcare needs motivated and business-minded leaders who are equipped to facilitate change from within their organization and throughout the industry at large. Offered on the weekend in New York City, the Cornell Executive MBA, MS in Healthcare Leadership is the only dual degree of its kind, combining business breadth and healthcare depth with world-class faculty instruction and an unmatched alumni network. Take the next step towards driving innovation in the healthcare industry by connecting with their admissions team. Search Cornell EMBA-MS to start your journey.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Hey, Maricella, how you doing?
Hey, Kristy. I'm okay. It's late in the day today, so I'm a little tired.
Well, we have recently come off of Thanksgiving in the U.S., and certainly I think a time to pause and to think of what we've been thankful for. So I'm wondering if there's anything top of mind for you.
So I'm thankful for my health and that of my family. Not everyone's doing great, but we are getting there. I also have my nephew now. I have my first little nephew, and I'm very grateful for that, even though I haven't met him in person. Honestly, it's been a heck of a year, so I'm just grateful to be ending it. Is that bad?
No, I think a lot of people, we've gone through so much in the past years. Even pre-pandemic, I think we all had ups and downs. And so collectively, it's interesting that we think about, obviously there's, in the classic sense, I guess, the calendar and a year block and all of that. But we've become, conditioned to think of it in that way. But I don't know. I would encourage you maybe break it down into smaller chunks and find those things that you can be thankful for and happy for. But definitely shed the negativity or shed the things that didn't work and go into next year with, all your hopes and dreams.
I'm being a little annoying because I've got to travel this year. I got to see my family. I am grateful for a lot of things. I have a lot to be grateful for. I think it's just the time. So what are you grateful or thankful for?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the kids, but that's because I can hear them screaming right now. So they're definitely top of mind. But a number of things. I'm thankful for the work that we do. I'm thankful for this podcast where I get to have just really inspiring, amazing conversations. I'm thankful for the Ellevate team, who's just, continues to inspire me and impress me every day with the work we do. And thankful for our community who just, I don't know, has supported me so much over the past year. I feel really connected and understood, which, during those times that we are struggling, it really feels great to have that. And I'm thankful for you, Maricella, because I couldn't ask for a better co-host.
Thank you. I'm thankful for you and for our team as well. That's sweet.
Well, and I'm also thankful for our guest today. Karen Lee is the Chief Executive Officer of Pioneer Human Services. And I really loved this conversation with Karen. She is inspiring. She's passionate. She's doing really important work around how we create pathways to employment for those that have addiction issues, formerly incarcerated, mental health. She really cares a lot about disrupting the workforce and how it is today and who has access to employment. And she's doing a great job creating change and really being a champion for others. I know you're going to love my conversation with Karen.
I'm sure I will. You're saying a lot of things I like.
All right, well, let's get to it. Hello, Karen, and welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here today.
I'm very excited for this conversation. We've got so much to cover, but I wanted to get us started learning a little bit more about you. Would you mind sharing a bit about your story and how you got to where you are today?
Certainly. So my story, in some ways, it's unique and groundbreaking, and in other ways, it's the story of every female executive, which has its moments of boredom, hard work, right? Challenges. So it's an interesting story, I think, but I don't know that you could make a movie out of it, which is what I always say. So I'm a military brat. When I was young, we lived overseas quite a bit, and probably a little bit more overseas than in the United States. I was in Germany for 4 years and then Korea for 2 years, and those were my school years. But eventually we came back to the state of Washington, where I was a junior and senior in high school. And in my junior year, I met an individual who I now know must have been an alumni, a graduate of West Point, who was on the lookout for youngsters who wanted to go to college at one of the most challenging universities that we have in the country. And I wanted to do that. So I was blessed to be able to be accepted to the United States Military Academy at West Point early when they were accepting women. So I graduated in the class of 1986. After that, I was in the Army for not quite 5 years, and returned to the state of Washington, where I went to law school. And along the way, got married and had 2 children, and had a number of jobs. I practiced as a attorney in a law firm here in Washington, in downtown Seattle, a large law firm. From there, I went to our investor-owned utility. It's called Puget Sound Energy. Probably has about 1.5 million customers, and had a number of positions there. Ended up being in a executive position, and from there, I went to lead our state's employment and or labor department. I know that you have those in Canada. I'm not sure, Kristy, if you're in New York. So I think in New York it's called a commission, but in our state it's called the Employment Security Department. And I worked for female governor Chris Gregoire while I was there, and was in that job for almost 6 years. And from there I came to Pioneer Human Services, where I'm the CEO today, and I've been in this job 11 years. And now my children are in their 20s. One is 24 going on 25, and the other one is 27.
Oh my goodness, that's exciting. Are they in the Pacific Northwest with you?
No, my son lives in New York City, and he is going to school at SUNY Tribeca. And my daughter is playing professional soccer overseas, and she lives in Copenhagen.
Wow.
And I also have a blended family, and my other 3 children, one is in the Northwest, and the other 2 are in California.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And no one went into the military?
Nobody went into the military, and I tried. So I always tell my husband, I said, well, we got the grandkids, and we're working on the grandkids. So that's just how it is.
Skip a generation.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Although it's not, I feel like I should do a plug. It's never too late to join the National Guard, right?
I believe at some point they also have an age requirement, but yes, you do have more time to join the National Guard. That's true.
Okay. All right. So hearing your story and knowing what you do now, I can really see some of the synergies that led you to this place. Would you mind sharing with our audience a bit more about Pioneer Human Services and the work that you do?
Yes, and before I get into Pioneer, I want to talk a little bit about the military because you'll see that they are linked. So when I was in the military, this would have been in the late 80s, women were very restricted in what branches of service that they could select because none of the combat arms branches when I was in the military were accepting women. So your choices were limited after you left the academy. It's not like today. Today it's very different. And women can be anything they want to be, but when I was coming up, that wasn't the case. And so I chose a branch called ordnance. And a lot of what you do in that branch is you provide it's logistics. So it's about making sure that the soldiers that are in the field have the supplies that they need to be successful and defeat the enemy. And so we did fabrication in my branch. And so that meant that if you couldn't acquire a part, you had to make it. And that experience led me to be selected to be a division chief at the Army Metalworking School in Aberdeen Proving Ground, where you're teaching soldiers how to operate a lathe, weld, join metal. And so I always joke that I thought when I left the Army I would never smell metal shavings again, and I was ready to not smell any metal shavings. And I laugh at that now because uh, I've probably smelled metal
Oh my
shavings
gosh.
in almost every job in some capacity. And when a part of what you do is a complex machine shop, the smell of metal shavings can be translated to the smell of money and success. So I always laugh about that. And I actually do like the smell of metal shavings. So what Pioneer does is that it is a nonprofit employment social enterprise, and we are one of the largest in the country at what we do and how we do it. The social enterprise part of Pioneer is where we employ people for as long as they want to have a career. We have a standalone aerospace division where we machine aerospace parts for our customers. And some of the parts you probably know, some of the parts you probably don't know, but we make over 1.5 million parts a year. The part that you would recognize that we're most well known for are the escape hatch assemblies. Those are the exit row doors in Boeing 737 aircraft. We make almost all of those for our customer, but we may also make a lot of other stuff, but that's something that you can just picture and you can see every time you walk into a Boeing aircraft.
And we're very thankful for.
Thank you. Yes. And as we are too. So that when you're in a employment social enterprise, one of the things that you do is that whatever your mission is, the type of people that you're trying to help. So Pioneer, our purpose is to help people that have been involved with the criminal justice system get a new start in life. And so we do that by having an opportunity for a career in machining and manufacturing in the aerospace sector, but also we provide services to help people either divert from jail or to make the transition from incarceration to society, one that will be successful and less challenging. So the services that we offer at Pioneer are jail diversion through substance use disorder treatment and mental health treatment, in jail services, job training services, housing services. We have over 600 units of housing across the state of Washington. We have over 50 locations where we deliver services from, and we serve about 10,000 people a year. And the results of our program are dependent on the type of service, but for example, our job training and employment program has a success rate of 96%. So that means that 96% of our students do not go back to jail. or prison, and we measure the wages that they're employed at. So we also measure well-being in terms of the quality of life of our clients, and we're very, very proud of the work that we do. So to the extent that a service is reliant on additional funding for us to deliver, then we use some of the profits from our enterprises to help support that line of service. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, it does. So, can you paint a picture for our listeners who many may know, but some may not? What is that pathway for the formerly incarcerated when it comes to housing and employment?
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of barriers, right? There's a lot of barriers to finding employment that has a living wage, that is also investing in your future through skills building and opportunities for growth. And so the work you do is really important, but to help to contextualize that, what is the typical pathway for someone who's recently released from the penal system?
Every person who is incarcerated is an individual and has an individual story. And on top of that, there's what we call in our line of work criminogenic risk. And all of us have our unique risks and our unique needs. So to be successful in our business, you have to give everyone the services that they need that relate to their individual risk and need profile. And if you do that, you can be successful. So what I found in my experience here is that women are very different than men, and not all men are the same. So what I see with women is that their life trajectory that has them interacting either with the local jail or with the prison system tends to be related to a difficult experience in childhood. And that can be neglect, or it can be abuse, or it can be drug use. But there seems to be this um, history of trauma related to neglect. And as that woman progresses in life, then she will often use drugs to mask any type of pain related to that trauma, and or a bad relationship. And so many times you see women that are incarcerated simply because their boyfriend or girlfriend possibly was involved in crime, and they were in love with that person, and they were supporting that person and making poor choices. And on top of that, if children are involved, then they're often separated from their children when they're incarcerated. So the services that we would offer women would really focus heavily on behavioral health needs, first and foremost, how we could, housing. So things that are related to stability and health, and then family reunification. And all of those things need to be in play prior to us really, seeking to have an employment relationship with that individual. Whereas, men may come to a lifestyle that involves crime differently. They'll also have trauma in their lives. They'll also have past trauma, but it might be from witnessing violence or growing up around violence. It can be to having an absent parent, maybe having an incarcerated parent, maybe living in a place where there were very limited economic opportunities, and everyone that was seen as successful was only successful because they were engaged in illicit activities. Maybe there was abuse in the home. Maybe school was difficult because an undiagnosed learning disability. Maybe the young man had a short attention span and just could not sit still, and was at the same time a person of color, and so wasn't served well by the education system. So you see all these different reasons why people act in ways that we call are antisocial, um, have very different beginnings, and so the way that we work with everyone is highly individualized. I hope you're getting that.
Yes, I am.
That's why we have so many different types of services, right? Because we want to work with people early in the process before they go to prison. So that's why we have so much jail diversion, and that's also why we have so much behavioral health related services. Because many times, if you can work with someone from a mental health, substance use disorder perspective, you will also begin to help them develop the appropriate protective factors where they can make better and better decisions. It's like a muscle, you make one good decision. Wow, okay. Then you'll make another one. Maybe you'll have a little bit of a step back that we can um, work on through mentoring. Then your next choice, you'll make a better choice. So making good decisions is the result of really putting a lot of energy into someone in ways that's appropriate for them.
I really want to call that out, the individualized solutions. And the reason is that, when we think about, so many of our listeners are likely in the professional space. And when we think about diversity, equity, inclusion efforts in these big corporate environments, which also mimic society, it's much easier to just put people in these big buckets, right? You are, what is your label? You can only pick one. And we're going to put that label on you, and we're going to try and meet your needs against everyone else who shares that label. So if you're a person of color, if you are LGBTQAI, if you are identify as a woman, like, we're putting that label on you, and then we're applying a one size fits all type solution or support, and that doesn't work because we are diverse and we're unique, and we have multitude of different factors and identities that influence our lives and how we show up in that life, and how we maybe don't have the ability to show up. And so being able to look at that individual versus that label, and really be committed to supporting them where they are and for who they are, I think is where you're going to see true systemic change. But it's hard to scale that. I mean, how are you really able to meet the needs of so many people when you have that individualized approach?
So that's a really good question, and it's one that we wrestle with. Part of our mission statement is that we partner with communities to transform society. So government has the responsibility to provide a safety net for the community that it serves. And more of the communities in our state are beginning to see the light that it's cheaper, it's safer, it's more productive to um, to help people, even if they are doing things like breaking and entering, for example, to cars, right? For drug money, let's say. We are better off as a society by getting that individual into treatment than we are having them spend a night in jail or 5 nights in jail and sending them to court for a misdemeanor and then having that start all over again because they have an untreated addiction. So partnering with government means that we help our government partners develop programs that can serve a large group of people. And then in some cases, we're the service provider. In other cases, it's another community provider, and or we partner and hand off. So government really is the key when you're trying to serve the masses. And I would also say that local government is the key. It's not necessarily the state, because the state is made up of communities. So when we push resources to communities, communities know the answers to their problems, and they also know what they're willing to do and what doesn't really align with their community values. So we have found that by being open to having different service packages for the unique communities that we partner with to deliver services, we are at our most impactful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that distinction. I think in the US, we tend to, and not always, but we tend to think about, systemic change maybe on a federal level or like a bigger scale, and bringing it down to, okay, what can you do today in the community in which you live that you recognize, you're connected to? How do you really, start where you are and in a place you understand? I'm also curious, and pivoting the conversation slightly, but I want to talk about, the current state of workforce and workforce development and industry. And there's been a lot of conversations lately about the shortage of workers, particularly, I think, in some of the labor intensive jobs or some of these specialized skills areas. And so do you see that as an opportunity for your business and for the people you serve to really be able to create more rapid change around workforce development and tapping into these, changing industries that are really looking for a bigger workforce?
So I would say that it's a complicated answer to your question. The power paradigm has shifted in favor of workers. And overall, I think that's a good thing. Workers are demanding more flexibility. Workers are demanding higher wages, particularly for entry-level positions. And I think that that's been needed. At the same time, we have to raise prices to be able to accommodate that, particularly if you're in a business that has low margins. So I think that it's going to be it's going to cause a shift in our economy, and I don't know that we today know what that shift will look like. I think that many people really did much better during COVID because we had so many supports that we were pushing out to workers. We had extended unemployment benefits. We paid higher than average unemployment benefits. We had rent moratoriums. We had mortgage forbearance and forgiveness. And so all of those programs together enabled people in lower income spaces to save money and still have a place to live. So we will see where things turn out, but it could be that we never go back to the way it was. It could be that we will permanently have to be much more flexible with our workers and permanently have higher pay wages. So that just remains to be seen.
But it's there's so much there, and yeah, how that impacts across the spectrum of business. But I definitely do think at the start of this pandemic, the conversations were really around the disproportionate impact on people of color and those in a lower socioeconomic place, and to come out of this with the conversation maybe shifting to where maybe those communities have more leverage, see more opportunity is exciting. But it really will then come down to, can business and the world continue to support that in a meaningful way? And I know it's very nuanced and complicated, but seeing that shift during a pretty dark time is gives you hope that change can happen. Well, Karen, and not to then shift again in another direction, but I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. We ask these questions at the end of our conversations, and so humor me with this lightning round. What is your favorite day of the week?
It's not Monday. Good.
I'll go with that. Any day but Monday. Who would be your dream dinner guest?
Do I have to pick one?
No, you can pick as many as you want.
Well, so today is we're taping this on October 21st, and Colin Powell died 2 days ago, and he would definitely be a dinner guest I would have liked to have met. So he's definitely one. Certainly people like Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King, Muhammad, um, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, characters, just big people in history would I'd love to just sit down with. I'd also like to sit down with someone who was a complicated person and just ask questions, someone like Thomas Jefferson, and I would like to ask him about what did you really mean when you drafted the Constitution, and what did and what did you think of yourself as a slaveholder, right? These complex characters that we have in our history that we have held up as perfect for so many years, but now now the school systems are starting to teach the imperfections in those characters. I would like to ask him about, did you know that you have an entire black side of your family today that gets together and are identifiable? So I'd like to interview him today, not at the time that he was alive, and ask him what he thinks.
I'm, I'm sitting here. I'm so intrigued by that answer because in my mind, I'm thinking, like how much that will shape even our understanding of history and of these people, right? And you were to talk to, Thomas Jefferson or, Jesus Christ, like we've learned about these characters through storytelling and retelling and perspective and perception. And yeah, who were they really? And to be able to make your own judgment and, really get to ask those questions, I think would be that's like the best answer I've ever heard to this question. I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time, and really, you know, history is is so rife with the stories others want to tell, and maybe not always the reality. Do you have a favorite recent read?
You know, I am just so my favorite recent read is whatever I'm reading, and I have it right here. I'm reading a book called Halfway Home, and the author was the speaker at our most recent. We just had our annual lunch at Pioneer. We have a fundraiser every year, and so I've just started this book Halfway Home, and the author is Reuben Jonathan Miller, and it's called Race, Punishment, and the Afterlife of Mass Incarceration.
Yeah.
Very good book.
Okay, I am definitely going to read that. And do you have a final thought you want to leave with our listeners here today?
My final thought is, if you've ever watched Law and Order, don't take it for granted that the way that people are portrayed on TV is real life. I used to love Law and Order. You know, my daughter who wants to be a lawyer, we would sit on the couch and that show came on almost every day. And every day we would sit on the couch and we'd watch an episode of Law and Order, and we loved the characters, everything. Then I came to work at Pioneer, and I started to meet in real life people that had been formerly incarcerated, and they are nothing like the characters that I saw portrayed on Law and Order. And as much as I think that there is great storytelling in that in all of those series, I think they're doing our country a disservice. And if I were a writer for Law and Order, I would write, what happens after Law and Order? And how does that person remake their life? And what happened to that person prior to the time they committed that crime that Law and Order they're trying to catch them for? Why don't we make a show about people that are between the ages of 3 and 5 or 3 and 10 that end up in prison, and then how they have to rebuild their lives because maybe their sentence was disproportionate? I think that should be the show. So if I can leave all of you with anything, it's just have that thought while you're watching Law and Order, and realize that it's a human being that has parents, that has children, and maybe life just didn't get give them a great hand, And then I would ask you to think about my belief that 95% of the people that are incarcerated can be a productive citizen and be healthy. We really only have to lock up 5% of the people that we're locking up today. And we've overcorrected, we've overlaid racism, we've overlaid bigotry, and so now we have this massive problem that it's got such a strong foundation that if you take out one brick, it doesn't even seem to make a difference. So if you'd like to learn more about mass incarceration, you can come to pioneerhumanservices.org/quiz, take the mass incarceration quiz, read some of the material on our website, follow our LinkedIn, and just raise your knowledge level and open your mind to the fact that we are all human, and then start to act on that by who you vote for, who you elect. Think about the judges that you elect. Think about your county sheriff. Is this a lock 'em up person that I'm going to be electing, or is this a person that really believes in rehabilitation and all people can change? That's the thought I'd like to leave you with.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
Thank you so much for being such a big supporter of the Ellevate podcast. We want to learn more about you and what keeps you up at night. What are the topics and speakers most relevant to you in your career? Please go to ellevatepod.com to fill out our survey, and we'll make sure to incorporate your suggestions as we're planning for 2022.
On Deloitte's OnCloud podcast, my co-host Mike Cavus and I talk with innovation leaders to explore how they use cloud engineering for new possibilities for their organizations. Join myself, David Linthicum, by subscribing to OnCloud wherever you get your podcasts.